Hello there. So recently on the channel, we've taken a look at band members who are overqualified and band members who are underqualified. And today, I want to take things one step further and take a look at metal bands who are hard carried by one particular mighty powerhouse, substantially schlonged member. The only rules are that I'm not including solo projects or bands that are basically solo projects, because that would be a bit silly, wouldn't it? So these are either bands that have one member as the primary driving force, or bands that have one member who is substantially more famous than the rest of the band, which has significantly helped their popularity. I'm well aware that there's a couple of controversial figures on this list, and my including them in this video is not some sort of inadvertent endorsement of their shenanigans. Kinda sad that I even have to stipulate that, but hey, you know what internet people are like. Enjoy the video and let me know what you think of my picks in the comments down below. Cheers! James Hetfield is to Metallica what an engine is to a car. What Bradley Hall is to beans. What a 17th century child is to dying of dysentery. The riffs, the voice, the songwriting, the mustache, the general I will personally throw you through a load-bearing wall energy. He's credited as either the primary or co-writer on the vast majority of Metallica's extensive catalogue. And that signature rhythm guitar style of his with that unrelenting, furious downpicking is still, even to this day, the benchmark for metal rhythm guitar playing. Now, that's not to say that the others don't pull their weight, of course. Kirk's up there lovingly massaging his wah-wah pedal. Lars is up there doing his best interpretive dance impression of drumming. And Rob's just chilling, probably just glad that no one's calling him the new guy anymore. But honestly, from a purely sonic perspective, James could just like replace the entire rest of the band with cardboard cutouts and a backing track, and the whole back half of the audience probably wouldn't even notice until like the third song. To be honest, as far as I'm concerned, James is Metallica, especially these days. And the fact that he was really the only one that had like a super standout performance on their last album kinda proves the point. Thanks to James, Metallica are still the biggest metal band on the planet by quite a considerable margin. And by now, he should have the fucking henchest shoulders in the entire world due to all of the crazy amounts of carrying he's had to do throughout the years. Respect! Vocals, blistering shred guitar, vocals and blistering shred guitar at the same time. Not to mention the vast majority of the songwriting in the band. The guy was running a freaking one-man metal factory, while the other guys just kind of like stood around offering moral support. I mean, granted, of course, the other guys were all super sick at their instruments too, especially Jan, I believe, the keyboardist, whose synth solo dueling with Alexi was definitely one of the band's linchpins. But Alexi was always the driving force and like several steps ahead of the rest of the guys. And as good as all the other members were, how can I say it? They just didn't really have any sort of like personality or presence live. All of the focus was always on Alexi, both on the stage and off. Even though Children of Bodom was a proper band and collaborative effort, their sound was undoubtedly his brain wired directly into an amplifier. I have no idea how this guy managed to come up with the idea to fuse neoclassical metal with groove metal, with power metal, with folk metal, with black metal, and like everything in between, into a surprisingly cohesive sound. Rest in peace to an absolute legend who set impossible standards to the rest of us mere mortals. Thanks a lot, mate. Now, I wasn't sure whether to include Opeth or not, as I guess by this point you could make an argument that it's essentially a solo project of Mikael Akerfeldt's. But the band does have two very long-standing members and is presented as a, proper unified band. Having said that though, it is mighty clear that Mikael does call the shots and is the, predominant driving force. Writing basically all of the music, the lyrics, the album concepts, probably even the fucking food catering orders, as well as fronting and being the face of the band. He's been the only constant member throughout the band's nearly 40-year history, which has just left Mikael steering the ship wherever he fancies, from death metal all the way to dreary 70s prog rock wankery. The rest of the band are all genuinely world-class musicians, and as far as I'm aware, they do still have like, you know, input and freedom to inject their own musical flourishes into the band. But at the end of the day, it is Mikael who has the final say. And if he woke up tomorrow and suddenly decided that the next Opeth record was going to be a blackened pop-punk concept album about mud, I'm very sure it would happen and he would be touted as a genius visionary. If the music in Dream Theater is Michelin star fine dining, then the music in Disturbed is more akin to a Wetherspoon's breakfast. Perfectly fine and does the job, but nobody's ordering it for the extravagant flavour, let's say. But these are the sort of bands that are perfect for a talented vocalist to come along and do their thing over. Now, I don't want to get into all the details and stuff, but whether you like David Draiman or not, you can't deny that he's a fucking sick singer and one of the best frontmen in metal, with an incredibly distinctive, gritty voice that has aged surprisingly well. At the final Black Sabbath concert thing last year, him and Jakey Lee doing Shot in the Dark was probably one of my favourite performances of the whole day. He was honestly great, and probably, I would say, outshone a lot of the other vocalists that performed that day. For better or for worse, he's also the guy responsible for that really annoying viral cover of Sound of Silence from several years ago, which was absolutely fucking huge and introduced the band to, like, you know, a whole new audience. Not to mention, he also somehow managed to make a completely nonsensical lyric become one of the most iconic, famous, memed-on lines of all time. Swap the Eggman out and you have a very solid, competent metal band. But with him, you truly have one of the most legendary acts in the genre. Like many others on this list, there's just no way that this band would be the same with like any other frontman. Just for the love of God, don't go anywhere near his social media accounts. Oh God. Legendary Norwegian black metalers Emperor are truly a stacked band, with Sammet's brutal rhythm playing and Trim's furious drumming that's so fucking fast it sounds like he's being held at gunpoint by the devil himself. But frontman Ihsahn is operating on an entirely different level. He is the definition of certified evil genius. Harsh vocals, clean vocals, guitar arrangements, shredding, orchestration, this guy does it all. Their legendary albums In the Nightside Eclipse and Anthem to the Welkin at Dusk are not only like two of the best black metal albums ever made, but just like up there with, you know, your Master of Puppets and your Raining Bloods and all that. Come to think of it, I really do feel that Emperor is the only black metal band that actually made albums that could be considered like timeless classics up there with the greats. You could maybe argue Dimebag, but they're like black metal light, I suppose. And Mayhem are only really famous because of all of the antics and shenanigans, and most of their music is just like utter dog shit. So yeah, I do actually consider Emperor to be the only like true black metal band that actually made it. Anyway, if you can get over all of the, you know, stylistically bad lo-fi production, then there's a whole wealth, a treasure trove, if you will, cool guitar shit to be found, all thanks to Ihsahn. It's kind of crazy to say, and I don't think many people really realize this, but Emperor actually have some of the like fucking sickest dual guitar arrangements like in the whole genre. Some of the shit they came up with is so fucking creative. Well, who would have thought that all it took for a black metal band to make it was to have a 300 IQ virtuoso, composer, visionary genius as your frontman? Huh. Right, not gonna lie, this is the first band I came up with for this list and is sort of what inspired me to make this video. People think that Lorna was like this big sort of like overnight viral success, but in reality, you know, they were grinding it out like well over a decade, I think, as a, you know, pretty serviceable but forgettable deathcore band. That is, of course, until Will Ramos reared his verily tattooed head in 2021. Suddenly, the band fucking exploded and Will was everywhere. People couldn't get enough of this man's inhuman vocal range.
And it looks like it's done some vibration against the arytenoid cartilages, which are down here. If we can zoom in here, I think, and see. This is really cool.
From those demonic guttural lows all the way to those shrieking banshee highs and literally everything in between. The instrumentals are pretty solid too, of course. The guitarist and the drummer sure can play a mean musical instrument, but to the same standard as what Will does? No. Not to discredit the hard work of the other guys, but I do think it's folly to deny the fact that Will isn't largely responsible for the band's explosive success. I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of people listen to this band for the, you know, crazy goblin noise breakdowns. And not for the guitar playing all the pretty crappy orchestrations. Also, it's not only the fact that Will sounds like a fucking possessed espresso machine, but also the fact that he has the very rare gift of having a personality in the usually, you know, very flaccid and neutered genre of deathcore. Extremely carried. Whoa, so this one's gonna ruffle a few jimmies to say the least, but hear me out, okay? The instrumental side of Iron Maiden is obviously fantastic. The mythical guitar duo of Dave and Adrian, Steve's pioneering bass style, Nico's fun and distinctive galloping drums, and Yannick being Yannick. But all that aside, you absolutely cannot deny that Bruce is basically the reason why Iron Maiden isn't just a great Nwabban band, but one of the greatest and most legendary bands of all time, regardless of genre. A larger-than-life cartoon character who broke the fourth wall, Bruce is not only an accomplished vocalist, but also a licensed commercial airline pilot who used to fly the band to their shows, a beer maker, a writer, and even a fucking competitive fencer. Is there anything this man can't do? Jesus Christ. His seemingly infinite energy is always reflected in his stage performance too. While the rest of the guys are up there doing their thing, Bruce is fucking sprinting around the stage at breakneck speed, doing backflips and 3 costume changes a second, swashbuckling with a fucking 10-foot tall Eddie. Yes, I'm sure Iron Maiden still would have been successful without Bruce. You know, Steve and Adrian are still amazing world-class songwriters. But as successful as what they've done with Bruce, absolutely not. Bruce is really just one of those like insane generational talents, and they just, you know, completely struck gold with him. And this statement still stands strong today, more so than ever in fact. With the band swiftly approaching retirement now, you know, Bruce is still firing on all cylinders, while the others are starting to visibly flag a bit, let's say. So while long-haired, string-licking guitar icon Herman Lee may be the face of Dragonforce, he actually has a very small part in writing the music. Not many people seem to know this, but the actual musical engine behind Dragonforce is the other, more unassuming guitarist Sam Totman, who's responsible for writing the vast majority of the band's back catalogue, including their mega smash hit Through the Fire and Flames, which, thanks to the guitar video game Guitar Hero, really helped the band's popularity explode. Also, I don't know if any of you guys will remember this, but Sam's songwriting talents were also on full display in Herman Lee's old streams, where him and Sam would sit down and try and write a song in one session in the style of a particular band, and these were always like fucking hilarious.
Let's write a song about the war, the one with guns and tanks. Sadly, I have lost my arm. It's hard to have a wank.
It was very clear from these streams just how effortlessly Sam can churn out these ridiculously catchy bangers. Classic case of the loud member getting the spotlight and all the attention, and the workhorse member getting a polite golf clap round of applause and a nice pat on the back. Linkin Park were a genuinely tight, talented band, with Mike Shinoda being a criminally underrated creative force to be reckoned with. But no matter how you cut the cheese, is that a phrase? I feel like I've been in Brazil so long, I don't even English anymore. No matter how you cut the cheese, Chester's voice and identity was the real emotionally charged heart of Linkin Park. Hybrid Theory is still one of the best-selling debut albums of all time, and I truly believe that this is mostly down to Chester and how his voice and his lyrics and the way he delivered his lyrics, you know, it just like captivated an entire generation of listeners.
Everything you say to me, just one step closer to the edge, and I'm about to break.
And like many frontmen of rock bands who have this sort of like larger than life plastic character that's not very relatable, I guess, there are some vocalists like Chester who just have something a lot more sort of like raw and authentic about them that's just a lot more relatable and easier to latch onto. I'm not sure if it was really sort of like a specific thing, but more likely a combination of his like looks, his personality, you know, the subject and topic of his lyrics. There was clearly something about this guy that just resonated with people. Like with Bruce and Iron Maiden earlier, this is another prime example of a world-class frontman taking an already, you know, great, solid band, but just elevating them to transcendental levels. The fact that he was in a Saw film as well is also fucking sick.
You must pull the red lever before you, but no act comes without a sacrifice.
You can really hear how much the band heavily relied on him after listening to their recent comeback album, From Zero, I think it's called. It was pretty solid with plenty of catchy songs, but in the end, there's just something missing, you know, and it just ended up sounding a bit like a tribute album, I suppose. Peter Steele was more than just a frontman of a metal band. He was a true icon and ended up becoming one of those defining figures of the genre, much in the same way that Iron Maiden's Eddie is and Lemmy's Warts are. Type O Negative were a real collaborative band with excellent musicianship and vibe, but it's undeniable that Man Mountain Peter Steele did dominate, you know, the band's image and garnered the vast majority of attention. The fact that he also seemed to like live his brooding onstage persona, you know, just made it even more believable that he was actually a 300-year-old vampire that lives in an abandoned chateau in Transylvania. As far as metal frontmen go, they really don't get more like authentic. But it wasn't just his striking image that carried the band to fame. His incredibly distinctive ultra-bassy low-end voice was instantly recognizable and is what set him apart from his peers. I've always wondered what it must be like being in a band where one member is like ludicrously, disproportionately famous compared to the rest of the band members. I guess it must take some real humble individuals with, you know, complete lack of egos to make a band like this have a long shelf life. Another massive talent gone way too soon. And save some hype for the rest of us next time, yeah? For a huge band, Rammstein is often seen as one of the most collaborative bands in the genre, with most songwriting credits going to the band as a whole, which is unusually democratic. But that being said, Till Lindemann is without a doubt, you know, the sole focus of Rammstein. That legendary voice, booming, super enunciated, all in German, instantly recognizable literally to anyone, even if, you know, they don't even like metal. On paper, this incredibly weird, quirky vocal style absolutely should not work, but obviously the gamble paid off. He's also a published poet in Germany, which heavily reflects in his lyrics. Dense wordplay, plenty of double meanings, and a very deliberate use of the German language's harsh, almost percussive sounds, which makes the language itself almost feel like another instrument. But at the end of the day, as far as most people are concerned, Till is Rammstein. So Pantera's a tricky one because on the face of it, it's not entirely obvious, as both Phil and Vinny are super iconic in their own right and contributed so many cool things to Pantera's sound. But in my opinion, ultimately Dime is the one who has his fingerprints all over Pantera's music and basically made the band what it is. I don't think many people realize this, but Dime basically single-handedly redefined what metal riffing is. Walk, Domination, Cowboys from Hell, I'm Broken, 5 Minutes Alone. These aren't just iconic riffs, these are like fucking foundational to the sound of modern metal. You can literally trace a straight line from Dime all the way to like most metal bands today. I can really only think of a very, very small selection of other bands that had one guitarist who had just this much insane amount of raw power, both on record and on stage. The guy had the equivalent of like 5 other guitarists inside of him. Hang on. Ugh. So yeah, in conclusion, both Phil and Vinny were instrumental to the band's sound as well, But come on, what they were doing was just not comparable to what Dime contributed to not only the band, but to metal as we know it today. Well, that is it. I do hope you enjoyed this video. What do you think of my list? Agree, disagree? Tell me in the comments down below. Take care, and I shall see you again for another video very soon.